So this is a handout that I made to kind of hand to couples because I needed it all explained in one handout. So here's how we, put fire on, kindling on the fire, wood on the fire, whatever you want to call it. And then here's water, what puts out fire. And so I made these lists. So the thing is we're going to start with building safety because that's number one. So of course, I don't know about you, but most of my like people around me and my cohort and everything when I was in grad school, it was like, I don't want to do couples. I don't want to do family. I don't want to, it's like, can you imagine listening to people bicker and fight and talk about their affairs and it goes on and on and on. And the thing is I don't know how crazy I got in that, but I absolutely have discovered doing this PowerPoint on couples. I absolutely love doing family work, and I'm a family therapist and I'm certified in family life education. So that's where it started in my undergrad. And so, I have these stacks of books right here. This is in this PowerPoint, I have the most books referenced I've ever referenced before. And so it was kind of eye-opening to me. It's like, and I've read majority, almost all of, every book. There's like one that I haven't read fully in that list in the back, and I'll show you the references in the books. So as we go through this, it's all based on research and books for sure. It's research based. So this is the slide. So we start with safety. So just know that here's misunderstood, powerless, and trapped on this side. And then here, this side is understood and power. So when we don't feel safe, we don't have power, we don't feel understood. So go through this. This is all I'm going to start with is safety. We don't have time to go through to repair and boundaries and values. That's for another time. Basic safety. So this is basic 101 couples. This is not for crisis couples. This is not when you're in crisis. That's a whole other topic. This is basic couples. But the point is everyone needs to provide safety. So definitely focus on safety and connection and how that leads to everything else. But so here's the connection part: dates, bids, friends, commit, we. This is, here's Gottman's. When we start talking about we and us, that's the commitment part, and empathy and emotions, which is Sue Johnson, and then partnership and attachment. So, and on the other side, it's stonewalling, it's me, it's comparison, it's insecure attachment, it's a non-committed fight or flight brain, and you're aggressive, passive aggressive, or passive. So that's where we go into on the opposite. And then flooding is his term, Gottman's term of like, when men flood, they flood faster and stay in it longer. So that's where we have to understand how to repair. Okay. So I wonder if we can play this and actually hear it. But I will probably just leave it here. If you haven't seen this, look this up on your own so we can just move on. And it's just a quick, funny video about, her nail in her head and how the hunter, because, the male in this relationship, he's the hunter. We're going to talk about that. He's here to fix it. I just want you to pull out the nail and everything will be fine. And it's about the nail, right? So think about this. I call it, it's not about the shoes. So there's another analogy of empathy, right? So do you walk in people's shoes? Okay, we have that. We need to walk in someone's shoes. There's another statement of, there's three of them, that you never go to bed angry. I completely disagree, and all research shows that you just go to bed, take a break, go to bed. It's not a good time to talk about it. And then the other one is, it takes two to tango. it doesn't take two to tango because it takes two people to have a relationship. So if you're tangoing, it only takes one to really mess things up sometimes. So if it takes two to tango, then, what does that mean? This is from a professor that I worked at. I taught marriage relations at UVU. And, we talked about this a lot of like, it takes two people, two willing, growth mindseted people to have a relationship and to heal, to repair, to connect, to have trust, and then have safety. So all those things. So this is just a funny video that you can watch later. I won't try to make the sound work. That explains a little bit of that. So a little bit of an icebreaker there. But the next one is for Horseman. So now we're just going to get into what we need to know first. Very first, this predicts marital happiness and stability. And it predicts if a couple stays together. Gottman has 45 years of research. I worship a little bit, confession, I worship their research and how much fantastic information they've given the world in relationships. They're it, Julie and John Gottman. So this, he predicts, because of these four horsemen and how couples repair, he predicts if a couple stays together, about 95% of the time accuracy in 6 minutes. And he is still on. He's on. He's 70-something years old. He's on. He has the same birthday as me too. It's awesome. So he's on. And I mean, 20 years he's followed couples, and he can predict if they stay together according to how much they do the four horsemen and how they repair it. So he says, you know what, conflict's conflict, but really it's how you repair. So how you connect and repair, remember in the first slide. So how we connect and how we repair is how we can say if a couple is going to stay together or not. And he's, 95% right. So the four horsemen are these: contempt, criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling. They're just the basics. We're going to talk about a little bit of the genders in this, of course, stonewalling, and contempt and how those play out. But this is the point of making sure that we're not doing this on a daily, often basis, because 70% of the time, if we're doing this in our relationship, that's when our relationship is deemed to end. So of course, these are some things that you can deal with: criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. But just know this is your little list of avoiding these four defense mechanisms. They're from fight, flight, or freeze. We go into defense mechanisms after that. Shutting down and stonewalling, emotionally, physically, mentally, and criticism, right? Blame, it's defense mechanism. Contempt is that really passive aggressive, manipulative, vindictive, gaslighting. So it can go in that order and get pretty deep. And it's kind of just that, sometimes it's sarcastic. We're like, oh, I'm just sarcastic. And I roll my eyes like, why did you say that? What are you doing? Why won't you just tell me? And it's just that condescending voice even that is contempt, okay? So you can think about which one of the genders do these more. Stonewalling, 80+% is done by the male, and contempt, it's almost 80% is done by the female in a heterosexual relationship. So, and we're going to talk about this next thing. So how are we zeros or heroes? So we're going to talk about this book, one of my favorites. I've listened to this book in the car with my husband twice. It's a great book to listen to on the road trip. So I learned tons about myself. So it's not, I promise you, it's not just for men to read, but it's a great book. It goes over a lot of relationship stuff. I mean, half the book is nice and dicey, your sexual relationship and your intimacy. So it's awesome. And so here's what heroes do. Okay. Here's the hunter and the gatherer, hunter, male, female. I mean, those kind of things he talks about, but here's what a hero does. And you know, I'm not going to read all of them, but it's like, okay, staying curious and how you keep a healthy communication and tell her you care with facts. Sharing your world is how you keep trust in an open relationship. So that's how you build trust. That makes a woman feel safe, sharing. Okay. And then the bids part, I could talk about bids all day long, but you either turn towards your partner or you turn away. Those are your two options with bids. So he talks about bids in every single book he writes. And so you can bids are with any human. Your kid comes home, they're mad, they hate math, they hate the teacher, whatever it is, they're throwing a fit, and that's a bid. A stranger opens the door and smiles at you and you walk in, that's a bid. That's a bid. So you think about it, a touch, a text, a wink, a wave, a response to a question, that's a bid. So you have two choices. You turn towards the bid, you turn against the bid. And that's one of the ways also in how you repair that, of how he predicts if relationships stay together. If you're going against your partner's bid, of course, many, many times, that's going to lead to some destruction. That's going to lead to resentment. That's going to lead to a lot of root issues that we're going to talk about. So just know that this is the hero one, right? And the zeros don't share. They don't take breaks. They don't display empathy. They don't honor dreams, and they don't build roadmaps, love maps, dreams. So that means you're not as close as to friends, deep friendship, and they're threatened, and they're disasters. They're not the rock. So heroes are rocks. They're the rock of the foundation of the home. So and I'll talk about the home in a minute. The building the home that Gottman has. So zeros fix and correct the problem before the validation. And that's the video that we were going to watch about the nail. So it's like, okay, they jump to the fix. Okay. So what's wrong with that, right? You're hunters. You want to go out and get the meat and bring it back. That's you're wired for that, right? And so if you want to fix the problem, but the issue is correcting the problem, trying to fix the problem before you validate it or before your partner says, you know what, now I want your opinion. Now I want you to jump in. Now I want you to fix the problem. And I don't even use the word fix. So it doesn't work. So if you can kind of quickly think of an analogy with me about this, because I'm very visual. So think about a tire. So we have a tire in our car, and you know, we're always in our cars. And how do you continually maintain your car tires? Well, you gotta rotate them, you gotta get new ones once in a while. And if you get a nail, you go in and patch it. So the tire is not fixed when I go in, and I'm not going to go into just wherever, and I'm not going to do it myself because I like less swab. And I'm going to take my tire in there, and that's why I bought my tires from them. And and I'm going to go in and have them patch my nail. Now, if that tire is not patchable, then I have to get a new one, and it starts all over. But it's not fixed because I could hit another nail in like 30 seconds as soon as I drive off the lot. So then it's maintaining them. So just think of the maintenance of a relationship. We don't fix very much. And actually, Gottman's research shows that 80% of conflict is never fixed. It can't be fixed. It's just maintained. So conflict or a problem, right, is maintained because you don't know when that problem is going to come up again. And it's all about how you repair that problem. So go with me with that. And then here you go. You live longer, you're more, if you're married or have a long-term partner, she lives longer if she has female friends. This is out of the Men's Guide to Women. Friends are super important. statistically for women. You live longer if she lives longer, and encourage your female friendships. So those are hero. These are hero things, right? So you'll live a happier, longer life, and you want to encourage her female friendships. So that's just a little tip there. Okay, so here's the sound relationship house. So this is Gottman's trust and commitment, but here's trust, right? This, I want you to really think about safety first. Okay, what provides safety? And then trust is next. Well, building love maps, got to know what those are. I have a handout on those, and we're gonna, there's an exercise in this PowerPoint on what that looks like, how you turn toward instead of away. Remember the bids, that was the bids. So how you turn toward, turn away. Your positive perspective, you know, that's a growth mindset. That's a book of growth mindset. Mindset is the book by Carol DeWitt. And how you manage conflict. Remember, that's the repair part. How do you manage it? You don't fix it, you manage it and you maintain it. How do your dreams come true? What's going on there? You know, creating shared memories, meanings. You know, it's kind of like, to me, it's like pillow talk, right? So what are we doing about our shared dreams and our separate dreams? And so building your love maps is what I'm going to focus on and give you some tips on that, of course, which is here. So here's your love map exercise. Go through these real quick and see if you know these. Have your partner write down the question, you know, the answers to those questions for you and for him or she or him, them, anything, whatever you are in a partnership with. So if you have most of these down for your partner, you're doing pretty good. If you're lacking, then continue working on it and building your love maps. One way to do that is Gottman has a card deck app. So you can see this picture over here of love maps, open-ended questions, rituals, opportunities, sex questions. There's about, I think there's about 2, 4, 6, 8, there's like 10 different categories, and you can click on that and there's a whole bunch of questions. I like doing this in the car while we're on a road trip, or like you do it with your connection time. You can do it on date night. There's nothing wrong with that. So you pick one and you work on it for a month. Just one deck, right? And you focus on that when you're dating. You focus on that when you have a minute in the car and you pull up the app and you're like, okay, tell me about your favorite this. And you go through the rituals of connection, how you like to be connected to your spouse, your partner, or how you, so that goes into your love languages that we're going to go over. So those are just some ideas of how to completely continue your love map building. And then here's another one of your 5 hours of magic. So I will send you this whole article. I've got that saved. So this is the basic part of the 5 hours of magic for the week. Okay. Do you know, statistically, it's gotten worse. I just recently heard the newest one. There's a couple, it's about the average couple is speaking face to face, just connecting 30 minutes a week. That's pretty sad and disturbing. And we're not really deeply connecting, right? And the thing is we're home together all the time. So it's kind of like being home alone, but together. So you're home, but you're not alone, you're together, and we're not deeply connecting. So this is one way to start the minimum of partings and reunions, and then appreciation. So those are those bids, remember? So how do you appreciate your partner? With a bid. 5 minutes times 7, that's 35 minutes a week. Okay. We have 180. I do the time. I do I have a PowerPoint on this on time management. We have 168 is what I meant to say, hours in a week. So minus 5 hours. What do you have left over? 5 hours is nothing. So minimum weekly date, 2 hours, no kids, no this, no hot topic time. And then I add, of course, 24 hours a month that you go somewhere, 24 hours, or you dedicate it to each other for 24 hours, and we don't do anything else, and we cut out our schedule for that, and then 48 hours a year alone, away, minimum. And that's just going to keep that going. Plus, it's a reward system. Plus, it's your vacation time together. Plus, it's time just to get away. We have lots of dopamine when that happens. It's good to be in a different environment, all those things. Your kids will love you for it. Go away. And that's what I tell lots of my couples. So I don't know what Billy Crystal knows, but it's a cute, little, this is not his picture, it's his quote. So women need a reason for sex, men need a place. So I feel like there is something to that, but not always. It's just a Billy Crystal quote, right? Okay, so here's your love languages. And I don't know, most of you probably heard of love languages. So how do we connect? How do we feel loved? And how do we bid for other people? So we have to bid. Now, if you're doing it and you're trying to, you bring home, there's a story about a guy brings home flowers every Friday night for 25 years, right? Great. Is her love language gifts? And no. Does she say anything? No. Would she rather have this or that, or words of affirmation or quality time? Possibly. So you've got to understand these. This is a book. You don't have to buy the book to go through this. You just have to Google it, and you can take the quiz, and you will find out exactly what love language you are. And I promise you that doesn't change. It doesn't change much over the years. You stay in the same love language. Even as a child, most children will keep in the same love language. We don't know all the time why that is, why someone is really more of a words of affirmation than a touch person, or why quality time is number one for them. I can say most men in general are words of affirmation and touch. They need to be told that they're doing something right, and they need to be touched. They need that. They're hunters. Back to how they're wired and how we're wired. It's just how it is a lot of the times. Now, you might take the test and you might be gifts and acts of service. A lot of men are not, but it's okay if you are. It's great. But if you allow your partner to know that, then you're not wasting your time going through some of the other ones. Now, for example, you went to the store, you bought a really cute card just for no reason. You put a gift card in it to her or his favorite place, to like a drive up or something. You give him a Starbucks gift card, and it has a really nice little cute, I love you, I appreciate you, I know you're stressed out about this or something. So it's words of affirmation. It's also quality time because it took time to go into the store and do that. It's a gift, and it might be acts of service if you put in there something like, something that she likes. So she's getting an act of service. Okay, service. So a pedicure or a Starbucks drive-up card. So you give her a gift card. So that hit so many of the love languages. Okay, so it doesn't have to be just one or the other, but sometimes it is just that. If they have their top love language is quality time, then you're gonna make sure you have undivided attention you look at the spouse, you connect with them, you interact with them, and you listen, and you carve out and schedule time. It's super important. So with that one, for example, can you have quality time without touch? Most of the time, not, but you can just be sitting in a movie theater and you're close to each other. So that's time and touch together. So you're going to be holding hands, right? So that's a little bit of that. And you can concentrate on that love language for the month. And I usually have couples like, hey, do your love language test and then date according to that love language for the month, and then switch. So oh, here's her love language. I didn't really realize that her top love language was acts of service. So we're going to schedule that. We're going to date that way. We're going to focus on that. And then the next month, switch partners. Does that make sense? Hopefully. You keep chatting me, anybody, as we go. If you have questions or comments, and we'll discuss a little bit, chat, and at the end, we'll do questions. But I know it's a lot and I'll go fast. And that's why you get the recording, and that's why you get some handouts and the PowerPoint, so you can look at it again if you want. Okay, so let's move to Sue Johnson. This is one of my favorite books. I think I've listened to it 3 or 4 times. I listened to it again before this. It's the one I listened to again before this PowerPoint. And I absolutely am an emotional focused therapist. I'm also an attachment therapist. I'm trained in EMDR, attachment focused, trauma focused EMDR through attachment. So attachment, and I have a book referenced about attachment. If you don't know what that is, just go into that book, or go into the definitions of what attachment needs are yours, and your attachment style, and your attachment style of your partners. It depends so much on that. Everything. So forget about learning how to argue about it. Okay. Analyzing your childhood, making grand romantic gestures, and experimenting with sexual positions. Instead, get into your emotional underpinning of your relationship. That's where the root is. The emotionally attached, dependent on your partner is much the way that a child is on a parent for nurturing. Okay, so I could go into that all day long of parent nurturing, parent child, what you need for nurturing, once again, soothing and protection, safety, what you need as a partnership to be safe. So Dr. Johnson teaches that the way to enhance or save the relationship is to be open, attuned, and responsive to each other, of course. And the point of her emotionally focused therapy that she coined is to establish emotional connection. With this in mind, she focuses on the key moments in the relationship and uses them to touch points on several healing conversations. So these are the healing conversations. So she has 7 conversations. Once again, crazy therapist here of like listening to books about everybody's, I guess, issues over and over and over again. And so she talks about 7 different conversations that she has had with clients over the years. So she finds raw spots, right? So revisiting a rocky moment, or forgiving injuries, or keeping your love alive. So these conversations, you get insight into the defining moments in your relationship and guide and reshape to provide a secure and lasting bond. That has to be through the attachment and emotional attachment needs. So that's where she's at, and the cycle. So I always talk about looping. So think about in your relationships of where you loop, how you loop, how you keep looping in the same patterns, and how you are, if they're unhealthy or healthy. So we want the healthy ones, but looping in the unhealthy ones and the toxic ones are what causes severe damage and resentment in the root issue. So that's a book that you as couples can get if remember, you're not in crisis. This is not a crisis couple book. If you're in crisis, nope, don't go there yet. But it's a book that you can go through, and it actually has exercises a lot like Gottman's, you know, relationship cure, or 10 lessons to transform your marriage, or, you know, so what makes there and 7 principles is Gottman's. They all have exercises to do as a couple in them. So this is a book that you can do together if you're safe and healthy and just got some rough spots, or you want to, you know, try to forgive injuries along with your going to therapy, or on your own, but hopefully on with a therapist, or you can do it on your own if you feel like you can discuss it and be safe. So what's someone did that? That's a good question, because I have to define what a crisis is. This is how I define it. I have an emotional wheel that has the emotions in it. Okay. And you can go to Emotional Intelligence Part 1 and 2 on YouTube if you want to watch that. I would recommend that. That's the next slide. But here's an emotional wheel, and what's really going on. Not why, we don't know. Lots of emotions, why things are going on. But when you're an emotional wheel and you're on this side of the wheel of sad, mad, shame, scared, okay, those are your primary emotions. If you're in those emotions, your primary emotions, the secondary emotions are, you know, I'm hurt, I'm lonely, I'm disgusted, I'm fearful of, you know, so scared, fear, okay, you're in fear brain. And what's really going on is 4 things. You're either grieving, you're in loss, you're in trauma, or you're in powerless. You're powerless. Remember the very first thing on that slide that didn't make you safe is powerless. What makes us safe is having power. So when we're in powerless, then you're in fear brain. You're completely in fight, flight, or freeze. You're in survival brain. And so when we start off with loss and grief, okay, we're in loss and grief all the time. And then we go into trauma. It was a traumatic experience. But if we're powerless, that is crisis. So you don't know what to do. You're completely powerless. So what do we do to gain power? We find help. We find support. We go to therapy. We find, you know, so if you get fired, how do you find your power back? Well, you start looking at your resume and you start looking for jobs, and then you have a solution to your powerless. So when you're in crisis, which example, someone leaves, someone's on the couch, someone's separated, someone's completely impaired, we have domestic violence, some severe crisis of the family, somewhere in the family. So if that helps. So you have to understand if you're in crisis or not. When you go into therapy and you're in crisis and the therapist is like, okay, you're separated completely in different rooms in the house, say, and you're going to focus on what? You're going to focus on gaining back power and safety. That's it. That's what in the beginning, hopefully, because you got to be safe first. You got to bring back that safety. And, we're not working on the relationship as much of just you're not working on attachment needs, right? You're just working on safety. So that's the difference between crisis and just, speed bumps and other problems in the marriage of just going through life, of the seasons that we have to go through. Lots of seasons that we go through. Okay, so if this is another basic moves of emotionally focused therapy, you just move through this, and you'll see that if you read her book. So back to the emotional intelligence, go to the workshops of, are we emotionally intelligent? Do we need to check that? Do we need to go into that a little bit? Do we need a recap of how are we emotionally intelligent? Meaning you're present, you're not completely burned out. You can see your emotions, feel your emotions, share your emotions, all those things, and know your emotions first, all those things, because that's super important to move through this. So this is another one. So this is the thing that with family therapy, I ask how the family repairs, and I ask how the family deals with differences. How do you deal with disappointments, and how do you deal with differences? But with it as a couple, it's like, what are your differences? You're going to have differences. You're going to go through different stages of development all through your life, and those value systems and differences change. So meaning where you put your time, energy, money. So look at these. These are just a basic, like, okay, what are our differences? This is where I see a lot of differences in couples as they go along, because we don't know. You don't know how you're going to parent different, how you're going to use money different, how you're going to do all those things. And so I just like this one part of 4 Seasons of Marriage on page 30. This is, just this one section of this book. And it's like, how do we discover these differences? Well, you got to talk about them. But how do you discover a plan to deal with these differences? And so this is the example. This is a coworker's example that when I used to teach substance abuse groups, we would go in and talk about a lot of different things. But his importance, say, of family dinner on the table and him coming home and having a meal on the table was a 2. And her importance was a 9. So he works late. We were teaching group till 7 or something. So here's her importance. And you don't know this until you're married, until, unless you talk about it a little bit, but here's 2 small kids and here's dinner. And he's like, honey, I don't want you to worry about dinner. I'm fine. I'll just come home and have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm totally cool with that. My importance of having dinner together as a family or having dinner at all, it's like a 2. I don't want you to worry about it. You've got so much on your plate already. And her importance is a 9. So guess what's going to happen when he's never home for dinner, or they don't have a plan of how to bring this together? So he needs to get to a 4, and doesn't mean that we lower our value system. We just need to say, hey, you know what? So 3 nights out of the week, I really want to have dinner together. What does that look like? I want you home on time so we can have dinner together. So those 3 nights or 3 days, because we know that family dinner is still number 1 for success in the family. We still have that. And my family said it's still there. We're eating dinner together a little more than we ever have. We're home together a lot more than we've ever been, but we're disconnected. We're not connected, but we're home and we are eating dinner. So then we have to look at the disconnect or the connect after that. But so how do we maximize our differences instead of minimize them? So if you minimize hers, which is super important at a 9, he's being a 0, not a hero. And so, but if she's saying, hey, you know what? You're right. There's a couple nights where you're just going to come home and have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and we're going to be okay. Do you see the difference? Do you see how that? So you got to scale it. You got to know what your differences are. But my tip is you have to scale it. Because if you just say, oh, dinner's really important to me. Well, I don't want you to worry about it. It's not that big a deal. I'll eat leftover. I'll eat whatever's in the fridge. But if you don't scale it, it doesn't get clear, a lot more. It's a lot more clarity. You get a lot more clarity if you scale it. Okay. So now repair and fighting. We got several more slides, but we're going to get there. So here's the repair checklist on this. This is just some statistics. I could talk all day long about statistics, but those are just some Gottman statistics of marriage and relationships and partnerships. So, and I do have a list of a handout that I'm going to send out with the fair fighting stuff, but this is just a little bit of it, right? So the point is a 30-minute week, hot topic time, or whatever you want to call it, make it safe. So the point is safety again, right? So safety is number 1. So how do we do that? Well, we have to make some rules. No, 4 horsemen. You know, that would go in with contempt or criticism of language or yelling. Shutting down without taking a break first. You know, it's like, okay, I feel me shutting down. Let's just take a break. And that always has to be number one rule, is taking a break and letting the other person take a break. Timeouts is what I'm talking about. And if things get too flooded, body-wise, emotional-wise, then you stop. So if the hot topic becomes a body sensation, a flooded sensation, a fight, flight, or freeze, a contempt or criticism or defensive, we have to stop. So that's where we just practice. Even if you do 10 minutes and stop, we're practicing talking about hot topics and getting through it. If that bill needs to be paid, or that kid, you know, parenting issue that you have with each other, once again, differences. You're talking about differences in hot topics usually. And what your needs are. If your needs aren't being met, and how do you bring that up? It's pretty difficult sometimes. But we have to understand before we do that some root issues. So what, once again, loss, grief, and trauma, developmental, relational trauma, self-concept, abandonment, shame, denial, mental health issues, chronic health issues. So severe mental health issues, chronic health issues are in the root, okay? You can have addiction and junk values and thinking errors in the surfacey stuff, financial issues, and that's surfacey. Maybe a job loss, so you have financial struggles. That's not going to be forever. The leaves fall off, they feed the root though. So if they keep coming back, right, those patterns, then you're feeding the root issue, and you will start having resentment. And that's supposed to be in the root issue. Resentment is a deep root issue. I mean, think about the resentment that happens when the patterns keep coming and coming and coming, because you're hurt and inadequate and raw and stuck and anger and betrayed and I feel hopeless. Those are all your secondary emotions in the trunk. So just go over that in a hot topic time. What are some of your root issues? What are my root issues? Oh, well, there's abandonment and shame. There's usually lots of shame in there. An attachment issue. So go over attachment, say, oh, yeah, so I'm having some insecurity. I'm having an anxious attachment or avoidant attachment. And that's in the root issue. So then you go, okay, how do we improve our attachment styles? And then you know, and that might be therapy. That definitely individual or couples, but that's where you go into deep attachment, which is your childhood, which is relational, which is your self-concept, which is maybe abandonment, maybe shame. Those are all in the attachment part here. Loss, grief, and trauma, usually attachment. And example. So we're going to talk about this now. So where are you at? We're going to talk about, now we're going to focus on where are we at? Where are we at? Are we here, or here in your seasons of marriage? Okay. So Chapman goes through the seasons of marriage. There's lots of different developmental stages in marriage. You might all be in totally, which I guarantee you're in different stages. If you have diapers or if you have grandkids, you know, right? So all that changes along the way. So many things can be difficult along the way. Remember how you repair, how you deal with tragic trauma, trials, whatever you want to call it in that way. But seasons of marriage created not by difficulty of life, but by the manner in which a couple responds to those difficulties. Differences. You could add differences to that too. So winter is this. Emotions. So if you're in a winter season, okay, if go with me, hurt, anger, disappointment, loneliness, feeling rejected, and attitudes are negative. They're very fixed mindseted. They're hopeless, destructive, withdrawal, stonewalling, shutting down, freezing. Climate of the relationship, cold, harsh, bitter. In the winter seasons of marriage, couples are unwilling to negotiate differences, and their conversation turns to arguments, and spouses withdrawal and silence, stonewalling again. There's no sense of togetherness. The marriage is like two people in separate igloos. So you can kind of go through his 4 seasons. And I have a handout on that. So you can say, okay, what season are we in? Is this, you know, and winter's not my favorite season. And maybe that's why. This just sounds sucky and bitter and cold. So spring, summer, whatever you're in. But if you're half and half, right? Then move through the season. Get the leaves off the tree and get to a new spring, right? So that's an example. And then here's my analogy that I use all the time. So where are you? So there's pretty much 3 sides to a marriage. You're either fake, you got turf, and you don't have to water anything. You look really good. You don't have to work on it. You're pretty much roommates, but you look good. Okay. And you're not too happy because it's not, you don't go through challenges together. You go through them separately. And then there's dead grass. So where's the grass? Is it greener? That's the big question, right? So Gottman talks about a second marriage. So you're married and you can go through and bulldoze it up and start over. You may have to do that if you've got dead grass and it's not coming back. So the analogy is, I can just see it. You're bulldozing the sod, you're starting over, you're doing your whole yard over again because it's just dead. It's not coming back. That's a little bit of work. But fake, it's a little bit of work to get out of that, right? To get out of that turf and the fake. Okay, so then there's the patchy. You've just got a spot here, there, everywhere that is dead, but it's still green and there's still some stuff under there and you just need to water it. That's where we're at in this PowerPoint a little bit, right? So it's like, okay, I need to connect more. I need to meet her needs. I need to meet his needs, whatever it is, but we need to water it a little better. The number one thing to do that provides safety, that provides trust, then you connect. So you think about it. Watering the grass is connecting. So how do we connect? It's not communicating, it's connecting. Difference. There's a big difference in that. So how do we connect with 92% of us is connection. Also communication, but think about, it's not words. It's not the words. It's not communicating. It's our presence. It's our being, it's our soul, it's our body language, it's our bids, it's all those things. It's not just words. So think about what patches you want to like green up, right? And say, okay, this is one thing that we need to do better to make our green grass stronger. Not fake. You're not buying fake sod or fake turf. You're not, but so you don't go to the dead completely, but it's always possible to redo, right? Just start over. That's costly also, with time and energy and money if you're going to go to therapy. So either way, these dead spots can be rejuvenated for sure. Because you think about it, I resodded a couple spots in my lawn over the summer, and man, it just looks perfect, right? So I bought a couple slabs of sod and put it in the spots that got messed up when we put a gazebo in. And we had, lots of concrete that came in. So of course the grass got messed up. And I think of this analogy all the time of like, wow, my grass looks so good, but I had to patch it. I had to buy a whole new patch, put it in. So do whatever you need to do to get that in there if you want to work on that. Okay. So what is the rules of when you should enter therapy and when you shouldn't? So let's see. This is in my, I've got fighting for marriage here. So So Effective Couples for Therapy by Gottman. This is his list, by the way. This is his list. So it's like, and I am a certified domestic violence counselor. I worked with offenders. I've worked with the court. I've worked with, lots of classes for that. And it's actually against the law to do domestic violence as couples until the offender goes through 12 classes of domestic violence. And so you don't want to come together until all that's been done, or if there's a protective order. So yes, repeated domestic violence, you don't do couples. You don't need couples, you need individual, and you need healing, and you need the victim or the offender, whoever that is, or both, to do therapy. And they're dealing with anger management, if it's anger management classes or whatever, if there is a charge. So, and then if the partner's just psychotic, that's Gottman's words. That we don't do couples when a person is in blatant psychotic episodes. Okay, so if we're in a psychotic episode, if we're in that state and we've got severe mental health issues, and then when a partner is actively suicidal, that is too fragile, he says. When you don't do couples therapy when a partner is in that fragile state, or one or the other, or both of you, of course, anything in suicidality. So that's different. If you're in crisis, that's okay. So think of all the other stuff you can go into couples therapy for, of course. Even if you're not speaking, if you're separated, if you're fighting, like, these guys are ninja warriors, right? They're like going at it. But if, and I have to explain what domestic violence is, and I'm going to go through that list real quick so you know what that looks like. Here's the list. So it's not just touching, hitting, hurting someone physically. It's all of these things. And that is domestic violence to, right to the core here of the law. So taking a communication device is domestic violence. So just know what domestic violence looks like, okay? And know if you're in it, know if you're seeing someone else in it. We try to make sure that as, our companies get taken care of, we want to make sure that we're all knowing what domestic violence looks like so we can help. Same thing with suicidality. What are the signs of suicidality? What's the signs for domestic violence? And this is what happens to you when we're in a toxic domestic violence trap. So a little bit of that, and we're over time. So what questions do we have, if any? And if you need to go ahead and go, and we'll send out this PowerPoint to you and the handouts. But this is just a little bit of recap, and here's our, here's some domestic violence hotlines if you need them. And all the references here, I'm going to leave this screen up so you can see the books. It's very small because I have way too many books on this. How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk. It's one of my favorites. It's in my top 5. I taught marriage relations from that book. And then all the Gottman books and several others. So